Impact of Microaggressions on Mental Health and the Academic Performance of Minority Students by Regine Miller and Kaitlyn Thomas.
Many students who are part of minority groups are exposed to statements and actions of microaggression, both intentional and unintentional. According to Merriam-Webster, a microaggression can be defined as a statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic minority. When these microaggressions come from educators, those who are entrusted with the task of guiding and encouraging young students, they can be particularly harmful and can have a lasting effect on adolescents' performance, self-concept, and self-esteem. Whether these microaggressions are issued through purposely biased statements or through nonverbal actions, it is easy for students to feel as if they are not capable of success if they are conditioned to believe so. For this reason, it is important to the researchers to find empirical evidence to back the eradication of microaggressions in the classroom. The purpose of the study is to inquire about how microaggressions issued in the classroom may affect both the mental health and academic performance of minority students. Because this is an extremely sensitive and subjective topic, the nature of the study will be qualitative and phenomenological, drawing from students' personal experiences and consisting of self-reported surveys as well as focus groups.
Our research question consists of, do microaggressions in an academic setting have a substantial effect on the academic performance, mental health, and self-concept of minority students?
So, for our literature review, microaggressions are just one of the many obstacles that minority students face in their classrooms on a day-to-day basis. A microaggression is defined by Webster as a common action that subtly and often unconsciously or unintentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude toward a member of a marginalized group, such as a racial minority. Microaggressions are a commonly overlooked topic compared to other race issues, and their detriment is very often ignored. Microaggressions also lead to depression and emotional trauma. Focusing mainly on students in undergrad, microaggressions are proven to be a factor in inhibiting students from feeling comfortable in their workspaces. Just as unnoticeable microaggressions students can feel invisible within a classroom setting. The students in the study also shared that their experiences as African Americans were omitted, distorted, and stereotyped in their course curriculum. Given that an educational environment is meant to serve and support students, minority students are made to feel like outsiders in their own institutions when they do not receive this warm treatment. In a study conducted in 2009, students reported feeling out of place as well. Students of color at a university reported seeing few individuals among their peers who shared their racial identity. And the Black and Latino population came from predominantly diverse areas where, as they put it, the minority was the majority. It has been a long-held belief that students cannot thrive in uncomfortable spaces, and it is even believed that this could possibly stunt academic success. A large factor in microaggressive behavior is the way in which white authority figures view minority students. Given that the population as of 2017 shows that white Americans make up 76.6% of the population, making them a majority. A study conducted by Allen in 2012 highlights the effects that negative racial predispositions can have on male students. Allen points out that a simple correction of behavior is needed instead of drastic measures, and that Black male students who do not perform normal school behavior are feared and thus deserving of punishment. Allen goes on to assert that to succeed in schools, Black male students must prove that they are normal by self-consciously regulating their every action in ways that prove adaptation to institutionally generated norms. Male students are forced to change their mannerisms in order to appear more docile and to prevent offending or striking fear into other students. Even though these pre-existing narratives about minority students have nothing to do with who they are as people, they can still have a subconscious yet detrimental effect on their educational opportunities. The female perspective is also important when analyzing stigma, as gender plays a large role in racial identity as well. A study conducted by Lewis in 2011 focuses on the intersectionality of racial bias and highlights our participant's story about her own racially biased, sexually demeaning encounter. She states that she would like to use her voice to speak out about the situation, but since there's a power differential, she has chosen not to directly address the situation with the perpetrator. Instead, she has leaned on her support network to obtain coping strategies and to decrease her feelings of anger. If the participant had acted upon her feelings of anger directly, it might have caused some unwanted repercussions for her in the future. The participant realized this and muted her emotions. It is also important to note that Black people are often seen as aggressive when they express emotions and are often signaled out because of their race. This phenomenon is exemplified in a study done by Morales in 2014. where a participant, Kelly, is outcasted due to her melancholic expression. The issue escalates to the point where her boss labeled her as intimidating. Being that Kelly is a normal college student, her actions are clearly not read as that. Kelly is sanctioned simply because her behavior is read through a race, gender, and class filter that prompts her employers to be fearful of her challenging their authority and not conforming to the way that they want her to be. Students are put in a tough position facing authority and their own self-value and morals. Outlets are very limited to those who experience microaggressions because the only individuals who can truly relate are those of the same marginalized group. Individuals often don't realize how a microaggression subconsciously pervades their outlook on life as well as those around them. Antonio, a participant in a study done by Lecoq in 2013, explains what his friend group is like, stating that he only hangs out with a couple people from his floor, but not too many, and that the white student on his floor stick to themselves, hang out in their groups, and they're cliquey. This marginalization only adds to the stress of an already rigorous workload. As a fact, the third finding is that in college graduates, both racial microaggressions and societal problems contribute to approximately 40% of mundane stress. Given that the study showed that nearly half of the stress that students experience in college was from microaggressive situations, it can be reasonably inferred that these microaggressions would have an even more profound effect on younger, more malleable students.
Participants will be school-age students between the ages of 5 and 10, 11 and 15, and 16 and 18, so as to get a reasonable spread of information across multiple age ranges and to see how microaggressions affect students at various stages of the educational experience. The sample will consist of both males and females. The students will be positively sampled, and the team will aim to specifically include minority students, especially those who attend majority white institutions. Students will be chosen from a total of 5 predominantly white K-12 schools in the DMV area. 10 students in each age group will be chosen from each of the 5 schools, so there will be 30 students from each school and a total of 180 students in the entire study. This will hopefully create a representative sample of minority students in the DMV area. Each student will be recruited using the same protocol in which an informed consent contract will be sent home with each student in order to gain the consent of the student's parents. Although only 30 students are needed from each school, each student in the school who is considered to be part of a racial or ethnic minority group will receive a packet to control for the possibility of attrition, failure to return the form, etc. Should the researchers receive too many applications, final participants will be chosen from the available applicants using a random number generator. Measures. The data will be collected using a combination of surveys and focus groups. Surveys will be self-reported and will use 5-point 30-question Likert scale to assess the participants' level of agreement with several statements pertaining to microaggression situations. Focus groups will be done in groups of 10 for each age group, and students will be randomly assigned to a group of their peers using a random number generator. The focus groups will consist of piloted, semi-structured grand tour questions that encourage and elicit long responses from the interviewees. Procedure. Participants will be given a 30-item survey on a sheet of paper which asks them to describe their level of agreement with each item/statement. The responses will then be collected and entered into Excel. Researchers will then run a Mann-Whitney test. For focus groups, participants will be divided into groups of 10 according to their age division using a random number generator and will be asked a total of 10 leading questions about how they have experienced specific examples of microaggressions and will be left to discuss among themselves things they have seen. Researchers will not specifically question them about microaggressions, but will instead give them general examples to elaborate on. They will also be asked about their academic performance as a whole, as well as their self-esteem. The data will then be horizontalized using a code system, and researchers will attempt to detect correlation between their self-reported academic performance, emotional states, dependent variables, and their experiences with microaggressions, independent variables.
The data from the focus groups will be analyzed using horizontalization. Researchers will create a code by using keywords and recurring ideas to simplify the participants' responses into a group of main themes and sub-themes. This will reduce the individual experiences of each student to an overall phenomenological description that captures the essence of microaggressions at large. The data from the Likert scales will be analyzed using non-parametric measures, specifically a Mann-Whitney test. The goal of collecting these results is to garner a universal idea of how the mental and emotional health of minority students are affected by microaggressions. The hope is that the results will be as representative of the overall population as possible, and that educators will take them into consideration when educating minority students.
That is all. Thank you for listening. And here are references too.